Thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. I just did this fun scene a couple lessons ago, and I had a comment down below that someone couldn't find dark blue glossy cardstock, okay? And neither could I when I turned around and looked for it. But when I thought about it, I think I bought this dark blue chrome coat on like a clearance rack. Might have been 25 years ago or something like that, okay? And usually if I have a ream of something like that, if it was a paper that I didn't use all the time, chances were it was on sale. So I wanted to try. Now you can find dark or black glossy cardstock fairly easy, okay? I think it's more of a universal type of color. I didn't have any of that, but there's a lot of metallics and kind of those iridescent types of papers available on the market out there these days, and chances are you might have some of it. You know, there's the metallics, the star dream papers, etc. Okay? And I wanted to try that look or that technique of doing those little swooshy kind of backgrounds with white pigment ink on some different papers here, just to give some people some options, you know. And I found that, you know, this type of paper worked maybe even better than the glossy cardstock one. I like that look a lot too, that it's really mirrored and whatnot. But I think as far as adding that kind of that background like that, the little swooshy background, I think the kind of the less coated papers might actually work a little bit better. Now you can do this on any type of paper, matte paper, whatever. I happen to like those metallic ones a lot. I happen to have a lot of well, I don't know about a lot, not a lot by most people's stampers and scrapbooker standards, but I have a decent amount of the metallics, and just a personal preference of mine in terms of, I don't know, the aesthetic quality of that, but you can see that right there. But anyways, did those techniques that I did from 2 videos ago on this, and it worked just fine. So I think you can use any type of paper. Naturally, you know, if you want your impressions to stand out more than you just stamp it, you know, you use a darker paper. But like I was saying in this video, I think if you stamp that white on something very light, it could have a very kind of elegant look to it with less contrast. So I think it's, you know, something that you can kind of play around with, but just going with very minimal techniques on a given card, I think you can achieve a decent amount of depth and richness just by using various degrees of opacity, okay? The background swoosh is fairly opaque, you know, we have very thin applications of it. You can see most of the black coming through this. Then we go a little bit more opaque with the use of something like a Brilliance Moonlight White. What's nice about that one is it dries on glossy paper or just regular paper fairly quickly in relation to a lot of other pigment inks that dry slowly, okay? And then finally following it up with a very opaque mark with the use of a white gel pen, okay? And then it's used for kind of the snowfall in this one as well. You can use it for, I don't know, this one happens to be just like a little pattern kind of reiterating the direction of the wind or breeze. And this one, of course, I used it as stars, but having that on the tree branches and tree trunk really gives it a added dimension and depth, okay? So, anyway, fun technique to use. I'll have to try some other types of imagery at some point in time using this technique, and I like to add those types of little swooshy kind of, I don't know, free-form applications of pigment ink on the background on dark paper. I think it's really fun. It feels like you're like a painter or something like that. The beautiful thing about it too is if you kind of screw up in the background, by the time you stamp the trees over, it pushes the background so far back in the distance, and then you add another layer of, you know, things like these dots in there. So no matter what that background kind of looks like, I don't know, it looks, you know, pretty good by the time you finish your composition or scene or whatnot. So I don't know, I'll have to mat these off and see what they look like as a card. I think they would look really nice as a, you know, some kind of a, I don't know, greeting card or whatnot. A quote would be good in here too, stamped in white. But anyway, all right. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoy it. Drop me a note in the comment section if you have any questions. Okay, let's see if this technique of light pigment ink on kind of a metallic paper will work just as good, if not better, than glossy cardstock. Okay, I don't know the name of this paper. It's probably metallic, or the I don't know, it could be a thick kind of black star dream, but I'm not really sure because I apparently threw out the label that came in my little 25 pack of these cards. Okay, I'm going to use this little scrap piece of paper too, and it's kind of the same weight as this one. The weight doesn't matter, but they're both metallic, you can see. I'm a sucker for metallic papers apparently, because I have a lot of them, and I don't know, when I'm out shopping for these things, I was never really consciously aware of going for metallics, but they're always the one that caught my eye. So I don't know, I think I love the texture of it. Okay, so let's get some swatches. On my card the other day, I thought I got too thick in some areas, so I'm going to try to go with a kind of a lighter touch with this, if I can. Okay, it tends to start building up a little bit in some areas, so kind of be careful. And again, I'm using more of the edge of this stylus tool. Now what I can feel is there is a little bit of a difference. I'm using Colorbox Frost White, by the way. What I feel is that there's a little bit of a kind of a grabbing type of feel to this paper. Maybe a little bit more so than the glossy. A little bit maybe, but I don't know. It's hard to compare because that last time was the first time I did that, so I don't have a lot of experience with it. But I think this paper has a little bit more grab to it. So, and once again, I'm kind of just touching the paper, and if I want to get more of a thicker swipe of some ink on there, I'll press a little bit harder, or you can also hit it kind of in repetition. Okay, if I want to go for some more definitive marks, then just kind of ink up and then do your mark like that accordingly. How much you ink up, it really just depends on how wet your pad is, right? Okay, so I want to go for a little bit more of a defined mark, so I'm kind of going a little bit slower and pressing a little bit more, maybe. I don't have really a great technique tip for you because I'm just doing this for the first time, or first couple times myself, so kind of getting the feel of it, you know. Almost looks like smoke or something like that, huh? Steam, maybe. Kind of find some little wispy kind of accents. And, you can try this with other types of applicators as well, maybe some brushes or something. There might be some things that are more conducive for this look that we're going for. Okay, something like that. Okay, and let's just experiment around with it. Okay, I've done it on, you know, fairly dark cardstock so far in that other video and then that one. So let's try something here. I thought this would kind of be interesting to do it on this elongated thing. I was thinking, this is just a scrap thing, let's just do a test, but I thought kind of that longer format might be interesting as a piece. So, okay. One of the things my teacher used to say was, don't just use your hand, use your whole body when you're doing these. You know, your brush strokes, you know, of which we never listened to him, you know, but you see what kind of they meant, you know, in terms of getting the, you know, kind of the full gesture of the stroke down. This is that burgundy one. This one, I don't know, it seems like it brushed. You know what, I might have had more ink in this, though, from having inked up and inked up and inked up on this one. I don't know, let me see. Let me go back to this one now. I don't know. I could just be getting a little bit more comfortable with the with that stroke as well. I'm not sure, but I don't know. I felt like it looked more graceful there than this one. This one's, I don't know, a little bit more choppy. I don't know. Maybe because this one's so long, I just kind of, it gave me more of a kind of space to make that mark. It's hard to see, huh, with this glare, with this glossy cardstock, but that's what it looks like. Okay. Or metallic type of cardstock. I don't know if this is metallic, I'm not sure even. But anyways, let's see. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the Brilliance, okay? Brilliance dries on coated papers, glossy paper, so it should dry on this one just fine if it dried on the glossy. Okay, now I don't need to use this whole tree, so I don't know. This thing's flopping around. This kind of bothers me. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go with a bit of a larger block with, also has tack and peel on it. Okay, pop off your tack and peel top. Place your unmounted die, rubber only die. It's sticking off the bottom a little bit, but not as much. Okay. And you can see where this is going to be used. Okay. Brilliance Moonlight White. Okay. Something like that. Okay. This is almost like a kind of like a bookmark format or something. Maybe I'll have it go off the top of the page on this one. At the top of the composition. Stamping at different heights. Okay. And it stamped out just fine, I would say, on these Petalics. I don't know if that's what it is, but we'll call it that because I do have a lot of the Petalics. I'll put the names of the papers down below of what I suspect it is. But I don't know for sure, so don't hold me to that. Or if you know what it is, this paper could be... I don't know, go ahead and put it in the comments section. But yeah, I don't think you need, you know, it's not necessary to go with the... let me see, where's my glossy one? Here's the glossy right here. That does have a nice look to it though, right? But this is a dark blue glossy. You can find black glossy no problem, but I think the navy blue is much more of a rare item. Might have purchased it on a clearance rack, you know, 20 years ago. Usually if I have a ream of something, it means, unless it was a paper that I use all the time, it was probably some clearance thing that I picked up. But anyways, here's the metallic one. The metallics do have a kind of a nice kind of iridescence to them, a sheen, you might say, that I do really like. And same thing with this one. I like the way the metallics, you know, you hold it in a certain direction and it's of a given textural quality, but then, you know, you hold it up to the light a little bit and it has that nice shimmering surface to it. So, okay, let's see how the gel pen works on it. It's probably going on here a little bit too early because I suspect, well, that Colorbox pigment ink isn't too wet on there, but let's add some snowfall or snow buildup on some of these branches. Okay. You really see that dimension that's created by the use of a lighter tone and in many ways a different texture, okay, to this solid white from the this is a Uniball White gel pen in a 0.1 millimeter size. So I say that because just, you know, it comes in a, I don't know, pens usually come in a, gel pens are usually not 0.7 or a 0.5 or so. 0.5 is fairly thin. This one you can get thins too, you know, just by putting less pressure on it. But it's nice that you can kind of add those thicks in there as well, you know. So when you roll this on, you know, good amount of ink comes out of it. Okay, I don't want to take up too much time with this. Let me get that on there. That works and looks just fine, I think. When you're doing the snow buildup, you can get blotchy on the branches if you want to, on the trunk. As I mentioned in the last video, kind of, I'm referencing the the kind of the swipe direction a little bit. Looks like the wind is coming from here and moving out that way, right? So with that being said, maybe there'd be kind of more of that snow, or that frozen moisture in the air, more on the left-hand side of the tree. So I'm building up that side a little bit more, maybe, than the right side branches. Definitely on the trunk, okay? Something like that. Alright, that is really fun. Okay. And let's try it on here. Remember, this looks fairly light because it's capturing the light, but in reality, it's like that. With all that reflected light, so if you can't find kind of a dark blue, you know, glossy cardstock, you know, you probably have some, some dark paper in your supplies, maybe. You can try it out. I've used a metallic paper and a glossy dark paper. Try matte dark paper. I don't see why this wouldn't work. It should work just fine. The thing that you're just trying to do is try to get a nice little swipe of, pigment ink down for those little swooshy background right there. That's what this, these scenes are about. In many ways, it's that kind of that spirit of that flowing, breeze or wind, an icy breeze, you might say, but I don't see why that wouldn't work on a matte paper. Does glossy look better, or metallics? I don't know. It would look different in matte, I think. But I think it would look just fine, too. It'd be this look right here with that swoosh would kind of be interesting on that, like a brown paper bag-ish looking, surface, I think. It would have just enough contrast where, the lighter tones over the top of it would, read just fine. I think it would look very earthy and kind of natural, maybe sometimes with even less contrast or less kind of a surface flare, being glossy or metallic. Boy, that Brilliance White is really dry on this surface already, which is good because it allows me to go in here and put my marks down on my paper without worrying about any of that pigment ink kind of getting up in that ball and clogging it, which isn't a problem. It just makes the process last a little bit longer because I have to kind of scribble it out to get it flowing, a lot. So on here you don't have to do that because the Brilliance dries very quickly. Could you do this in something other than Brilliance? I don't see why not either, It just might take a little bit of time for it to dry, especially if you did it on glossy cardstock. Okay, so here's your kind of layering and depth in there. If you want to kind of put a little flourish in here, maybe you can kind of go in and in the direction of this little flowing breeze. Add that in there. I don't know. It's kind of a fun little playful element, in many ways. It's kind of creating a bit of pattern, maybe. Or additional pattern to the existing textures. You can say that that white in there is also texture as well, you know, but isn't that kind of fun and playful? You know, to have something like that. Okay, and we have this right here. Okay, let's add. This is kind of a Milky Way-ish look, right? Ton of dots. Let's go in here and just add a few. I tell you what, I'll add these a little bit larger, okay? So instead of stars, maybe it's like little snowballs or something like that coming down. Kind of a little bit of a different spirit, but look at these two now, okay? Dark glossy cardstock. Okay. Black iridescent cardstock, okay? Gives you two different. Of course, that gives you that glossy look to it. It's pretty dramatic, but this is kind of fun too. That, you know, looks like that, okay, without any light reflecting off of it. And you get that iridescence, okay? It's really dimensional, isn't it, you know, when you add in those white highlights, okay? This is fun right here. You can do it on a piece of, you know, scrap paper. Makes for a nice bookmark, although it's not vertical, but you know, something like that, or a nice, you can cut that right there. This, something like this could be a nice tag maybe. But burgundy, so kind of a medium tone, right? So different looks on different surfaces, and a little simplistic technique of adding that little swoosh back there kind of adds to the overall richness of a given scene, look, technique, whatever. But it should work on anything. If it works on this paper, it should work on matte. So you can do it all in all kinds of different colors. Like a dark green might be interesting. You can do it on a light blue too, where you know, the contrast between this and the background will be much more subtle. Maybe it makes for a more kind of elegant looking card or whatnot. And, you know, of course, it doesn't have to be trees or something like that. You know, you can do kind of that little swooshy background for anything. You can do word stamps or something like that, but it just will add that little bit of an extra pattern, texture, whatever, and also kind of a nice little touch in terms of creating something from, you know, the creator's, the viewer, you know, the artist's hand. You know, it's something more free-form and something very personal to you. And one of the other things is that you do that type of background and, you know, I don't know, unless you're really, really proficient at it, you'll probably get something different every time, which I think is good, you know. There'll be plenty of room for variation and kind of spontaneity, I guess I'm looking for. Surprise. All right, so dip into that paper stock you have, you know, look in your scrap paper, you know, for some different little tags and things like that. Stamp different things, stamp a word stamp or something like that in white, and put those little white embellishments on it. It might look like really, you know, like three-dimensional, so you can get a lot of dimension, you know, just with a very minimal palette, I would say. You know, you can't get very much more minimal than just using white. But again, it's just in various densities, I guess, and opacities, okay? Less dense than that little swooshy background, you know, less application in some areas, getting, I don't know, variations of gray, getting a little bit darker, well, not darker, but lighter and more opaque with the Brilliance ink. Then you're finally going to something very opaque with the use of the white gel pen work on both the highlights and in things like the stars. Okay? So kind of thin to thick, I guess you can say, working thin to thick. All right? Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, drop us a note in the comments section.